And today we're here with Mikkel Bjerch-Andresen, who is a sports data analyst and former NCAA Division I golf coach based in Norway. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Ruby.
All right. Well, Mikkel, you recently wrote an article for Racquet Magazine titled "The Disappearing American College Tennis Player." Before we dive into the data, I'm just curious, kind of, what is your background?
My background's definitely not in tennis. I think you would laugh at my forehand right now. I can drive a golf ball and I can run decently now since I have sort of a midlife crisis into running. Yeah, I'm a golf nerd. I'm a past both player in college professionally, and I've been a college coach for 7 years. And then I've relocated to Norway. This is where I'm from. So I'm coaching here and doing some other stuff within statistics and analytics here. And so, yeah, I'm a golf nerd. So I pull a lot of golf data. And basically, I studied the roster changes on the golf side of college athletics over 20 years, as I've kind of been a part of that myself. And found a great comp in tennis. And I love watching the sport of tennis, and I've always been interested, both when I was on campus, but also watching on TV, watching the professionals and stuff like that. So that's really how I ended up just in a deep dive into tennis, as I wanted to compare my golf numbers to a equivalent sport.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we see that kind of clearly throughout your data, that comparison, again, individual sports attracting similar international student athletes, a lot of similarities, so it makes sense, the two together. In your article, you dive into this question, how much has international tennis recruiting actually changed the composition of college tennis? Why was that question nagging at you?
Well, basically, I knew that if I go back to golf again, which is kind of my home plate, I knew that we would see a lot higher percentage of international players on the golf side. What I found there in the data is what sort of I expected, that at the Power 5 level, or now the Power 4 level, the changes were faster and bigger changes in the roster spots. So a bigger share is taken by international players on the Power 4 level than at the mid-major level. So basically, I wanted to have a comp. Is that true through tennis as well? Mm-hmm. And so I took this 20-year window and pulled all the roster data I could find. And when I compare that to the NCAA participation reports, I have anywhere from 65 to about 80% coverage. So I have pretty high coverage. And then I looked at the data, where are the players from, using the from data in their online rosters, and then using the participation report as a key to kind of figure out how many spots we're talking about here in total.
Mm-hmm. And what were the things that stood out from that data?
Yeah, the biggest number is the 1,500 number. And I show all the percentages, et cetera, in the Racquet Mag piece, but broad numbers here, there are about 1,500 less Americans today in D1 tennis rosters than 20 years ago. And so that is the same methodology that I've looked at the NCAA participation report, which actually the number of D1 spots have remained fairly stable over 20 years. And there's some sad news right now, obviously, with programs being cut and stuff. But basically, over this 20-year period, the total amount of spots have remained similar. And then I've used my from data key to estimate how many of those spots were taken by Americans versus internationals throughout the years. And so when I look at that number, which I think is about 5,000 total roster spots in tennis, there's now 1,500 less of those being awarded to American-born players in tennis.
Most people assume that this is a Power 4 phenomenon, but you in your research see that it's not. What can you explain a little bit more about where we're seeing this?
Yeah, sure. So this is the difference between golf and tennis, is that in golf, there is sort of a ladder difference here. Power 4 has moved quicker to international recruiting. They have a higher share of international recruiting than the mid-major level, but I don't see that in tennis. So as a big group, Power 4 and non-Power 4, the international share percentages are very similar. So that is a difference between tennis and golf. And why is always a very interesting question. I don't have all the answers as to why, but I think that there's more, like tennis is a maybe even more international sport. Maybe in the US, the recruiting is not as strong of tennis junior players. And so that was very interesting for me to see, and exactly why I wanted to comp golf to a sport like tennis. To see that in golf, the mid-major level is lagging a bit behind, but in tennis, it's very much caught up to the Power 4 level of international recruiting.
And you kind of talk about some ways that you see the pull factors, why this is happening. Again, I know you might not be a tennis expert, but coaches keep going overseas, and what are they getting that they can't find domestically, in your opinion?
I can tell from my own experience as a coach. I was a D1 coach for 7 years. Your incentives as a coach is you want to field the most competitive team you can. And it's recruiting. Of course, you coach really hard, but you recruit very hard as well. And you're going to turn over every stone in order to find that player. Coaches are incentivized to field the most competitive team, like right now, that they can. And that's their incentives, and I think you see rosters respond to that incentive. Now with the internet, with social media, with everything, coaches obviously travel internationally to watch matches and tournaments, but I think that most tennis players, junior players growing up anywhere in the world, are very much aware of the college route because players before them have gone there. They also see it as a valid option to the pro path to play college tennis for 4 years. And so I think it's a dual, like there's more demand from the world of junior tennis players to come to America to play college tennis because they're more aware of it. With each international student that comes in, that seed spreads back home through the other junior players. So there's more demand for the spots, but also coaches, their incentives are, the contracts are higher paying, maybe more pressure. There's maybe higher turnover. This would be a bit speculation, but just anecdotally, I feel like there's more turnover in coaching. There's shorter contracts. Used to have D1 head coaches in golf and tennis have 30-year tenures, but I think those are shorter. And so the incentives for the coaches is just to really get the most competitive team. And since the whole world is knocking at their door, they're going to try to pick who they think is best right now.
Yeah, it makes sense. One of our co-founders, Sam Duvall, represents some American college tennis players, then also has that base of Cam Norrie, who came over and played for TCU. There is that pipeline for international students, I think, realizing the benefits of getting coaching, having access to facilities, being able to travel and compete against a high level that they'll then see on the tour, whether it's Michael Zhang at Columbia or Ben Shelton, Emma Navarro, you name it.
This is a very biased opinion on my part, as I've been a college athlete and a coach, but college athletics is not real. Like it's its own little bubble. It's paradise. It's an incredible opportunity, and it's memories of a lifetime. It's such a great way to get your education. And I think that awareness has spread across these 20 years, definitely across the whole world. And so the demand for everywhere, like each American that's at a country club practicing their forehand right now, there's, probably 10 Norwegians just down the street from me, or 30 East Europeans practicing the exact same thing right now that want that same spot. Whereas maybe in the past, they weren't aware of that, or didn't want that travel, or didn't see it as a risk to attend college. And I think that has shrunk with technology and just awareness over time.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm not an expert in this either, but when you see tennis is so hard to go pro in, similar to golf, to make it. So to get that education, I think for these families, wherever they come from around the world, are now seeing, okay, they can go on a scholarship and then get an education. And especially for these individual sports, which are tougher to make money in the long term, that's the investment. So it's, as the tennis is a drive, but I think similarly, the education component is so key. The US culture, whether it's for golf or for tennis, compared to the European culture and vibe of tournaments, what is your just like overall observations of the differences in culture?
I've been to college matches a lot at Baylor and Tech and stuff. I actually love those matches. I think it's really cool with the 5 courts next to each other, action all the time. It must be one of the best ways to view tennis. So I hope college tennis gets the exposure that I feel like it deserves over there, and that programs remain resilient in this rev share era right now. But yeah, if I can speak to sort of the golf thing, at least for athletes, I think what college coaches like a lot of time, you know, not to stereotype, but I think that a lot of Europeans are pretty independent. And so they come over and they sort of have a plan for how to develop, how to improve, and they take ownership over that a lot. And I think that Americans often can lag behind on that. So they might, you know, rely on the coach to tell them when to practice, to set a regimen, maybe because they've been brought up that way, that a coach is always present. In Europe, maybe not so much. And in individual sports, at least where I'm from in Scandinavia, it is very like driven by joy. The first few years is not that competitive. And I think the ones who actually reach the pinnacle in their junior years of tennis or golf must be pretty self-motivated and self-driven. And so I think a lot of coaches are happy with that sort of student athlete because they come in, they take care of their business. And if anything, as a coach, you have to tell them to not work as hard as they're doing, or not take it as seriously, work less technically. At least that can be the experience from golf sometimes. And of course, you have every personality type everywhere, but I think that's what people are happy with. And then I think as coaches, when you recruit international students, there are obviously a lot of challenges as well. That person is far away from home. I don't know about tennis, but in golf, grass types play a big deal. So you recruit a player who can perform in Europe in certain conditions, and you bring them to the US, and it's different. It's a different test. So some of those things take adaptation. And then obviously there's language barrier. There's a new school system. You know, in Europe, if you go to university, a lot is optional attendance, and you just take the exam at the end of the semester. So there's a lot of cultural things that take time to adjust to as a student athlete, and that as a coach recruiting internationally, you sort of have to learn the codes a bit and sort of which buttons to push.
As someone who's experienced it, we encourage our kids and say, it's so important to get out of your comfort zone as a student athlete, facing that adversity that makes you a better athlete. That's kind of what we try and do, is say, hey, by going over to Europe, spending 3 weeks, competing on new surfaces against different play styles, you might not win a lot of matches, but you'll come back a stronger player 2-3 months after. And then to kind of go back to where you were in your article, seeing the consequences of your data, not consequences, but just what might happen because of what we've seen with international students. Fewer American players on rosters, like you said, means less connection to college tennis, and then less connection makes programs easier targets for athletic departments to cut. Clearly that's happened in the past couple of weeks. You wrote that April 3rd, and now here we are with 3 programs just being cut. University of Arkansas, we just had Illinois State, and on Monday, St. Louis University announced it would drop their men's and women's programs. What's your reaction? You predicted it, and I don't think this is the end. So yeah, what's your take on what's happening?
Yeah, I did not predict Arkansas being one of the programs cutting tennis. It's very, very sad. Yeah, there are some challenges, right? And it's a tough subject, especially for me, because I am that Norwegian that I am writing about that came to America stayed for 12 years, left with one of your women, brought them over here, you know, have the kids here and stuff. But no, jokes aside, I think there are inherent challenges, and it's really important to get the community around the programs. So in golf, it's a bit natural because you usually are tied to a country club or some sort of club structure where there are other members who are in love with that sport. And it's actually a pretty social thing. Like, it's easy to get boosters into booster tournaments or have casual conversations with your players on the putting green before you qualify. And you see sort of the same faces over and over, which is a huge benefit to golf. And I think when you have, you know, let's say a purely international team, and on the tennis side, I would think that it's hard to get sort of that same buy-in from the boosters, from people around the community. I think it's natural that everybody wants a hometown hero. Now, what the solution is hard for me to say, because the coaches, like we all, our actions respond to incentives. The coaches are competitive, and they probably do a really good job. Like, a lot of tennis coaches probably do a really good job and are in it for the right reasons. And they have great kids on their teams, like coming from all over the globe. Probably really good student athletes. Like, tennis always has really high team GPAs and stuff wherever I've been. They do the right thing. But there is a balance where it's probably good for the community to have some hometown heroes and have a mix here. What the solution is, I'm not really sure. Should there be a certain caveat somewhere within conferences, within athletic departments? It's tough. If you put a caveat on a coach on who they can recruit, it'd be hard to get the best coach to take that job, because the coach wants to recruit the best players they can and use their networks across the globe to get the best team on the field. And so I don't know the exact solution. I think coaches are not to blame. I don't think players are to blame. And I don't know who is, and I don't know what the solution is, but I think we've gotten to an inflection point where it kind of needs to be addressed, at least. And if I was working at a school in an athletic department, it would be a topic of conversation that I would address, at least.
Yeah, a couple of the takes I've been listening to, whether it was Patrick McEnroe or there's another social media channel, No Ad, No Problem, that covers college tennis. One of the takes they said was, to build that community, to build that engagement, should college tennis be televised? Do you think it should be? Do you think that would help with its growth, or what other ways besides boosters?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you can work that out, I think it definitely should. Golf has a lot of ESPN Plus deals now, and there's other providers too. Like Baby Grande is a provider in golf that sort of has a lot of live streams. So if you have a higher international share, that could boost the energy around college tennis, as people from all across the globe could tune into those, and you sort of get these nooks tuning into the product. But yeah, I definitely think so. It's hard for me to say exactly on the tennis side. I think you have a great product in college tennis when you attend the events. That's what I can say, because I've been to a lot of them, and they're actually really, really fun, undervalued product on campus. That's a really fun sporting event to go to. So I would hate to see that disappear across campuses, that's for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of high school players, I'm like, have you seen a college tennis match? Because they might be more entertaining than seeing some of the pro matches. That camaraderie, them getting fired up on the sidelines. Again, I haven't watched the college golf in person, but being able to see it on the tennis side, it's just that energy there is electric. And I think it could be captured, and people just might not be seeing it the way that they should be. So I think that's just an interesting point I saw brought up. At the end of your piece, say that 2005 model 20 years ago, where 7 out of 10 roster spots go to American players, that's not coming back. It's pretty clear the trajectory we're on. So for an American family with a junior player who wants to play tennis today in college, how do you think they should invest their time and money? And I know, again, not an expert, but still, what would you say?
I mean, the honest answer, that's very hard to figure out, of course, is get better. coaches are going to get the best players on their roster, and you have the whole world demanding those same spots. So you need to be better than that kid who's practicing up against the wall in Slovenia, or who's practicing their serve in South Africa right now. And coaches, I think most coaches will choose the local kid if they're as good as the international kid. I think that is pretty obvious that most coaches would want that kid. So, I mean, there are other things that coaches look for, of course, like your character needs to be really good. You need to take care of your academics. You need to be a good teammate, and coaches look for this in recruiting. But the first bottleneck is just the level you're playing at. So again, I'm not a tennis coach, so I'm not exactly sure how you get better. But that is the truth, that American tennis needs to get better to claim these roster spots back. And then there might need to be a conversation about, at the conference levels or what have you, about certain shares of international born, what have you. But the truth is that the whole world is competing for those same spots, and coaches are going to pick the best rosters because they all want to perform, and that's how their contracts are designed. They're designed to win their conference championship. They're designed to what have you. And even though they're in it for all the right reasons, and you can argue what's right or not about taking an international player or American player, those are the incentives. And I think that's what's leading to, the change in the data that we're observing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, clearly, again, tennis is a global sport. Your competition is international. So for junior players, I think at least for us, what we're seeing is it's so important to face that competition, to take your game and your development to the people who are claiming your roster spots, just so that you understand that this is the level that they're at, and just to get exposed to that, I think is so helpful for our players to see the game and get out of their local bubbles. We are encouraging our kids to go face the competition, face people like you if it was golf, to say, hey, this is who's out there, who's gunning for your same spot.
Yeah, I can imagine that becoming a better tennis player, it's a benefit to play against even better players in practice and tournaments. I can see how that would be limiting if no players around you are as good as the level you're trying to reach. So for sure. And I think coaches look for level first. So when you have that in place, I think the character and sort of your understanding of the world and taking care of your academics, and it sounds like a good program that you're running for kind of broadening the toolbox just as a person as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. I guess anything else should we be looking out for? Any more articles coming from you or anything?
Yeah, I appeared on the Parenting Aces podcast. I think it's coming out soon. So I was challenged there to pull all the D2 numbers and stuff too. So when I have time here, the golf season just started, so I'm going to be working on my slice and maybe my forehand and my spare time, and prioritize that for the summer. But I will look deeper into D2 as well. So I'll probably publish it on Substack, or maybe ask Racquet to run that piece again too. So I'm sure I'll be touching in on tennis again.
Thanks so much for taking the time today and giving us a little insight into your data, into your experience with golf and tennis. And we're just so happy to continue this conversation on something that's so relevant and prevalent to what we do and what we're interested in.
Sure. Thanks, Ruby.